The Cleveland Cavaliers continue to be one of the rebuilding teams in the NBA. Not a lot is expected of them. They didn't do anything crazy last year. I don't expect them to do anything crazy this upcoming season. But nonetheless, for a rebuilding team, they continue to be fairly proactive in their roster building. They have made some interesting moves, to say the least, this upcoming season. Some quite positive via the draft, some quite positive via free agency. Some others a bit more questionable via free agency, and so we're going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to talk about what I mean by that, some of the moves they have made this offseason, and what their roster looks like for this upcoming season, and how that could impact them this season and moving forward. If you do go on to enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new, as I will be continuing to put out season previews for every NBA team as we approach the NBA season. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland Cavaliers' most notable and most important addition to their roster this offseason was that of Evan Mobley in the draft. Evan Mobley now adds to an extremely strong front court. The pairing of him and Jarrett Allen for years to come is pretty darn promising. Allen has now just been re-signed on a 5-year deal. And now Lauri Markkanen has also been added to the team alongside Evan Mobley. Kevin Love is still on the team, so the front court is strong for this group, especially with the future of Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, and Lauri Markkanen. Later on, we're going to talk about how that's a bit of a weird fit with bringing in Lauri Markkanen after Evan Mobley was drafted, with Kevin Love still being on the roster for the next 2 seasons and him being uninterested in a buyout. But nonetheless, the Evan Mobley acquisition was a very good one. I think he has a lot of upside in the NBA, whether that is at the 5 or at the 4, which is where he will most likely start this upcoming season, with Jarrett Allen being the long-term piece at the 5 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Mobley has the ability to be a guy who can just do it all and be a star in the NBA. Well, I think that was an absolutely brilliant addition. Of course, Lauri Markkanen was added via the sign-and trade. And then after that, there was just depth signings, Denzel Valentine, Taco Fall, and Kevin Pangos. And then, of course, Ricky Rubio was also acquired as well. And he will give some backup guard minutes in behind Darius Garland this season. As far as the outgoings go, Larry Nance was traded away, of course, in the acquisition of Lauri Markkanen and that sign and trade. Matthew Dellavedova is finally no longer a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Ricky Rubio filling in that backup point guard role. Devon Dotson has also left the team, as well as Isaiah Hartenstein, with now Evan Mobley or Kevin Love having to be the guy to man those backup center minutes in behind Jarrett Allen. When you're looking at the starting group for the upcoming season, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton remains the starting backcourt. Sexton is now entering the last year in his rookie deal. Cleveland have expressed their unwillingness or uncomfortability with locking him up long-term on big money. And I think many teams across the league feel the same sentiment, because he's a good scoring guard, no doubt about it. He isn't an elite three-point shooter. He isn't an elite playmaker. And that leaves him in a bit of a middle of nowhere land as far as the guards go in today's NBA, because if you're not an elite playmaker, if you're not an elite three-point shooter, it's tough. And that's not to say that he's a bad three-point shooter, and that's not to say that he's a bad playmaker, but his scoring numbers are being inflated a lot right now by the fact that he is in Cleveland, that he isn't in a situation that he can put up a lot of points, have the ball and is not in his hands a lot. But to be an effective point guard in most winning scenarios in today's NBA, you either have to be an extremely good playmaker and or an extremely good three-point shooter, and that's just not what Colin Sexton is. And again, this isn't to say that Colin Sexton isn't a solid three-point shooter, because he is. He is a solid three-point shooter, but I wouldn't consider him an elite one. He is a much better three-point shooter, and he is playmaker, there's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, Colin Sexton is a 2-guard in a point guard's body. He's a solid three-point shooter, not an elite one, but a solid one, who can score the ball, get to the rim, finish in mid-range, but isn't a very good playmaker and is sitting at 6'1", 190 pounds, and isn't that great on the defensive end. It's tough. It's a tough one to decide how much you have to pay him and how he's going to get committed to. So wouldn't be shocked if Colin Sexton does get moved this season before the trade deadline, or is dealt via a sign and trade next summer as a restricted free agent. But Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, as of right now, remains the guard duo. Garland seems to be the most long-term fit guy for the Cleveland Cavaliers as of right now, and looks to be the point guard of the future. Definitely has much better playmaking ability and passing ability than Colin Sexton does at this point in time in his career, and he looks to be the long-term guy at the 1. Colin Sexton could very well be moved at some point in time throughout the season. Issac Okoro will enter his second year in the NBA, sitting over at the small forward spot. I still am not completely against him being a shooting guard long term, and so maybe that is where he ends up being moved if Colin Sexton does get dealt. But nonetheless, he will be the small forward for the upcoming season, and will likely continue to his improvement off of his rookie season, which I think was fairly promising. Showed his ability to be a decent catch and shoot three-point shooter, and I think he can continue to improve on that. And I think has to be a potential to be a pretty good perimeter defender as well. Evan Mobley, of course, as mentioned, will be the starter at the power forward spot, and then Jarrett Allen, who was locked up on his new long-term deal, will continue to be the elite rim protector for this team at the 5. It's a solid starting lineup. It's extremely young, no doubt about that. Garland, Sexton, Okoro, Mobley, and Allen. Only one of them now off of their rookie deals. It is an extremely young group. But that's what Cleveland needs right now. They need youth, they need development, and they need a future, and they are definitely putting the right steps towards doing that. Acquiring Jarrett Allen last year, bringing in Evan Mobley, Okoro the year before that, they have put themselves in a good position moving forward. It just remains to be seen what happens with Colin Sexton. The bench is much more veteran-filled than the starting lineup is. Ricky Rubio and Kevin Pangos are now the backup point guards, neither of which are any bit young and likely long-term pieces of this group. C.D. Osman and Denzel Valentine will see some time at the 2. C.D. Osman has been a decent bench part of this group and could be a piece long-term for them as a decent scoring 2 or 3 off at the bench. Kevin Love remains on the team, and he'll get some minutes at the backup power forward spot potentially, but that's where the dilemma of Lauri Markkanen comes in, and why I thought it was such a weird signing. Lauri Markkanen's a solid young player, sure, and there's upside there, but they gave Lauri Markkanen a lot of money for a lot of years when they already had Mobley, when they already had Allen, when they already had Kevin Love, and now they brought in Lauri Markkanen. It just seems like a very weird fit. You want to try and get rid of Kevin Love, you're going to have to play him minutes. You just drafted Evan Mobley within the top few picks in the draft, and so you're going to want to have to play him significant minutes. Jarrett Allen is obviously a significant part of this team, so I don't know how the minutes get distributed within these guys. I know Mobley and Allen are going to start. I couldn't tell you what minutes Markkanen and Kevin Love are going to get. God forbid Dean Wade is definitely not going to get minutes within this rotation by the looks of it. But I think the Lauri Markkanen addition is odd. It's a nice young piece for this group, sure. He can definitely still have some upside, develop into a better player for this group long term, can give them some good spacing, some good three-point shooting at the power forward spot. But he's never going to be a starter for them as long as Mobley and Jarrett Allen are still on the team. I really hope they don't play him at the 3, because him at the 3 defensively is an absolute nightmare. They could do that once they trade Sexton if they do and move Okoro to the 2, but I just think that's a disaster defensively. So I don't know where this fit is long term. I think as a roster fit and a contract fit long term, it's very weird. Let me know what you guys think about the Lauri Markkanen acquisition for Cleveland Cavaliers fans. I know I've talked about this weird fit in multiple videos now, but it just seems like a very odd fit to me. I like what they have in the front court, don't get me wrong. I think Mobley, Allen, Markkanen is very nice, but I think it's just an odd fit, and contractually long term, I think it could run them into some problems as they move forward throughout the next couple of years. That being said, this is a young team with a lot of good pieces. Garland, Sexton, Okoro, Osman still young-ish, although definitely not in his early 20s anymore, but could still be a long-term piece. Evan Mobley, Lauri Markkanen, Jarrett Allen. There was a lot of young pieces to like on this team. But at the end of the day, this is still a team that's hitting out at the bottom of the Eastern Conference between them, between Orlando. They're hanging out at the bottom. They're not competing for a play-in game this upcoming season, in my opinion. And I think they take another step forward with the addition of Evan Mobley and their rebuilding, getting closer to getting to the playoffs. But I still think this team is too weak to be able to compete with those play-in teams when you're talking about Toronto, Indiana, Washington, Charlotte. Those teams are just much better than this Cleveland Cavaliers group at this point in time. But I think the Cleveland Cavaliers are continuing to be headed in the right direction towards development into getting into the play-in games post-LeBron James era. That being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below about this Cleveland Cavaliers group and where they're headed over the next couple of seasons and for this season as well. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you want to hear my thoughts on other season previews, then be sure to click the box on the right hand side of the screen. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.